Hey guys, you're watching Fix It and Post. We got a great episode for you today featuring Kailey Allan, and we're discussing sustainability in manufacturing and design. Hey guys, I'm at the Selkirk Technology Access Center and I'm joined by Kailey Allan, who's an instructor with a background in engineering and industrial design. And I thought maybe we could just get started with how you got into your career.
Yeah, so my formal education is in mechanical engineering. So I graduated from the University of Victoria in about 2015 with a degree in mechanical engineering. I worked in like a very traditional engineering sense for a few years after graduation, like mining, oil and gas, that sort of thing. And then I pretty quickly realized that I just really wasn't cut out for super industrial engineering, and so I ended up doing a pretty hard pivot in my career to product design and industrial design. And I ended up going down to the States and working for a small startup designing coffee brewing equipment. And just previous to that, I was like working up in Fort McMurray in the oil and gas field, so it was a pretty big shift for me. And then I've just spent the last couple of decades, really, I guess, just like dedicating myself to like design. And through that, I've become pretty familiar with like digital fabrication technologies and then using that as like a creative tool for design. And so I still do a lot of industrial design work, but also product design. And I don't know, I don't really know what I do, like what I would call myself now. Like I don't really have like a formal title. Like I'm not an engineer, but I'm not an artist, but I don't know. I play somewhere in all of that.
Yeah. What were some like the highlights of that career? Like were there parts of it that you really enjoyed and kind of miss?
Things that I really enjoyed about some of the work that I've done is just I've seen some really amazing places working like in industrial engineering, but I don't know if I miss it. It was just a perk, but I've really enjoyed working on like a diversity of projects and products over the years. Like I've never stayed focused on just like one project or industry or client. So like I've worked for probably over 100 clients working on, many different products and projects, and all of them have had their kind of fun things about them, but also miserable things too. And I think I've just really enjoyed like the diversity of kind of all of the things in my career.
Yeah. Were there any projects that you kind of regret being a part of? Like a lot of times I think back to John Sylvan and his regret over the K-Cup.
Yeah.
I think it's actually
Yeah, for sure. There was a period in my life where I started my own freelance consulting business. And at the time in that career, I pretty much just like had to take what I could get in terms of projects. And so just to get started and to pay the bills, I had to work on a bunch of products and projects that I truly just like didn't believe in. Like they were just like kind of dumb consumer products that, in the context of, talking about sustainability, like they were just, you knew that they were just these like consumables that were just going to go straight to the landfill at some point. And I never liked that. But I also had to pay my own bills and, those sorts of things. So there's quite a few projects that I regret in those early years. But they also got me to where I am now. And now I can actually work on projects that do care about those things.
Yeah, I feel like as long as I've known you, you've always been very like sustainability forward and kind of like environmental. Has that always been the case?
I would say so. I think it's more or less been like a value that I've always had, and maybe that was just like a product of my upbringing and my family kind of thing. But I feel like I've only really started to like it's one thing to have like a value of like sustainability, but it's another to be able to like actually like implement that value. And I wasn't able to do it in like earlier phases of my life, especially in industrial engineering, because they didn't care about sustainability at all in many ways. But now, as like more of an experienced designer, I can pick and choose the projects that I work on that like actually align with that. And so yeah, it has always been a part of me, but I wouldn't say that I've been able to express it until probably the last number of years of my career.
What would you say like sustainability in manufacturing means?
That's a good question. I feel like sustainability in manufacturing, I think it means designing and making with intention and quality in mind to ensure that things have longevity and durability. I think right to repair is a big one in manufacturing, or should be, maybe I should say, and design. I think that more transparency is needed in sustainability in manufacturing, and traceability and accountability. New materials. But I think overall, I think sustainability in manufacturing means just like being a lot more intentional, and also looking at manufacturing with more of like a big picture systems approach as well. Like not just focusing on, how sustainable is my one manufacturing process, but like how sustainable is like the materials that I'm getting, like where are they coming from, like what impacts do those have, how do they get here, how is our facility set up to be like more sustainable or to encourage sustainability in like our workers and things like that. And then like where is our products going and like what does that impact? So like kind of looking at it on like more of a big picture, I think.
Yeah, do you have any like design tips for newer designers? Like I know we've had conversations about like not gluing things together and how are you going to separate these at the end of life and things like that.
Yeah, I think the biggest tips that I have for young designers are, again, I think looking at like the big picture. It all starts with like where are you getting your materials from, and then it ends with where are those materials going at the end of their life. And I think as designers, we have the ability to make those decisions and to control those things through design. And so I would encourage just designers to like, look at where things are coming from and where they're going, but then also like designing with repairability, doing things like making it easy for people to repair things, and that means like just using all of the same types of fasteners and things like that. I think that it's also about using like as many similar materials as you can. I think it's also about like looking at like the systems that our society has set up too, like recycling systems, like choosing materials that will actually be able to be recycled is like another one. And I don't know. I think those are a couple of tips I have for people.
Do you think like geography plays a big part in what's sustainable?
Oh, for
Kinda
sure.
like using your local materials and what can be recycled locally.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, for sure. Different communities in different countries like have different capabilities in terms of like what they can and cannot recycle or accept or produce. And so that has like a huge sort of impact, I think, on sustainability and what designers are able to work with and manufacturers and stuff like that.
Do you feel like manufacturing in North America is going in the right direction?
I think it is. I think like right now with like the current sort of political landscape in Canada, there is like a really big push for local manufacturing and things like really like advancing Canada's ability to be a manufacturing hub. And I think that's really great for a number of reasons, because like to be able to cut down on transportation costs in terms of importing goods, like it's great if we can make our own goods and not have to transport them from all the way overseas. And like some examples would be like prefabricated homes, or there's like a really big push in Canada towards that, and that's gonna like absolutely change the construction industry and be so great from a sustainability and like waste perspective. And so I do think we're headed in the right direction. I think Canada is like a bit slow to adopt technologies that are sort of going to enable that to like happen at a quicker pace, but I think generally we're headed in a good direction, I would say.
Yeah. Like I've definitely seen a big switch from kind of consumerism to more of like looking for kind of like long-lasting, high-quality repair, like framework laptops, and just even like in fashion, just quality clothing that's just gonna kind of last longer. So
Totally.
definitely seen that. And how would you say 3D printing compares to other technologies in regards to sustainability?
I think that's 3D printing, like, I think there's pros and cons to it. I think that some of the pros is like it is accessible and it's shareable and it can sort of enable that like local fabrication that we were just kind of talking about. I think it's really allowing people to have that almost like right to repair that manufacturers don't provide. When things break, I can maybe repair them by using 3D printing. I think that there is, in some senses, very little waste, but in other senses, a ton of waste in 3D printing. I think the one thing that frustrates me the most about 3D printing would be just like the materials and the waste side of things. Like, you know, PLA is, for example, is one of the most common 3D printing filaments to use, and there is like no way that we can recycle it locally, like in a first world country. Like that's just not an option. And so I think the materials of 3D printing either need to be rethought, or we need to like really look at these like systems that we have in our society and like how can we actually recycle this stuff, because a lot of 3D printed material does go to the landfill, unfortunately. But so I think there's kind of pros and cons to it in terms of sustainability. I think it's really good in some ways, but in other ways, I think that it could be done a lot better.
Yeah, I agree. I look at it as like a double-edged sword. Like you have, especially with scanning becoming more available, you can like replace a discontinued part and save a whole system.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the materials you can't just throw them in your local recycling bin anymore or at all. So
yeah.
And then a lot of greenwashing too about biodegradability and other issues like that, and just kind of things like that. Did you want to discuss kind of the progress you've made in your sustainability class?
Yeah, for sure. So as part of the digital fabrication program, I teach a course in sustainability, and we kind of focus on a lot of things, but the two main projects that we do are a biomaterials project and also I call it upcycled plastic because we're not recycling it. And so one of those projects looks at like sort of creating materials that form a part of like a regenerative system. So how can we create and design materials that like actually like feed nature and as food for nature rather than harm it? So truly biodegradable materials that would give more life to plants and things like that. And then we've been taking 3D printer waste, PLA waste specifically, and we've developed a process to take that waste and then create PLA sheets that we can then CNC mill into new products. And then the whole concept is to be able to upcycle the plastic so it is waste and it has like quote unquote new value, but then by us taking it and turning it into a plastic sheet and then remachining it into something else, then we're kind of upcycling or giving that waste value, and it is no longer waste kind of thing. So those are two really exciting projects that we're doing in DFAB, and we just open it up to students and their creativity, and they find an application for their biomaterial and they develop a new product of their choice using wasted 3D printing filament. And it's a pretty good learning experience for them, just in terms of like staying really focused on design and fabrication, but really seeing sort of sustainability as not a barrier or checkbox, but rather like an opportunity for innovation, I think is kind of the main like flavor of that course, which is super exciting.
Yeah, like as those systems kind of grow, I would love to do a dedicated video on the shredding and the press and kind of the full cycle, and kind of as it ages, we'll see how many times we can kind of regrind it before we have to start adding virgin and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
totally.
I think there's a whole series of videos there if it works out. So
yeah, absolutely.
that'd be really cool. And just to kind of round out the interview, what kind of changes would you like to see, like from manufacturing?
From manufacturing, I would like to see more changes in manufacturers being accountable for their energy use, their carbon emissions, and their waste. And I would like to see more transparency from manufacturers in terms of where they're getting their materials from, how much energy they're using, those sorts of things. And then like traceability as well. So like where are all those things coming from for the consumer? Because right now we have this whole system set up where we buy products from manufacturers and then manufacturers get to like wipe their hands clean of like whatever happens to it after it's sold to the consumer, and then the consumer is forced to throw it in the landfill when they don't actually morally agree with that, but they have no other choice, or they're forced to repair it, or those sorts of things. And so I think that that's incredibly wrong in so many ways, but I would say that the change actually isn't in manufacturing. I think the change is actually in legislation. I think it's in governments. I think it's in governments having policies that are going to really drive how manufacturers behave, and like how manufacturers make things more traceable and how they're more accountable and those sorts of things. Like ultimately nothing's going to change unless manufacturers are forced to change, which ultimately comes from government. So I think that's actually where I would rather see the majority of the change. And you're seeing that a lot in Europe, actually. Like Europe is quite far advanced in terms of their legislation regarding like right to repair and traceability, accountability, those sorts of things. Like now you can scan a barcode on a pair of skis in Europe and it tells you like all of like the carbon emissions of all the different materials that are in it and those sorts of things for the consumer. Because right now we're just like buying things really blind and like unable to really make like educated, sustainable decisions for ourselves. So yeah, I think ultimately it has to come from governments.
Did you have any kind of final message for any designers or viewers?
Not really.
No? It's fair. I feel like we covered quite a bit. A couple questions I feel like we'll see in the comments. Are you guys accepting plastic for your kind of sustainability?
Yes,
recycling?
we are. So we are accepting PLA and PETG plastic as 3D printer waste specifically. And we accept that plastic, like no matter how big or small it is. And yeah, we'll happily accept it.
Do you have any like socials or contact information I can put in the?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah? Perfect. I'll get those and then I'll link them in the description. So.
Okay, sounds good.
That's all we have for today. Let me know down in the comments if anything you heard made you rethink some of your designs or some of the products in your home. If you like content around design for additive manufacturing or just manufacturing in general, give us a like and a subscribe. We have a lot of great videos planned for this year.